Well, thanks to Tim Worthington, we can now RGB mod all N64 consoles, including the translucent ones. How awesome is that? Well, the kit doesn't come with much, but that's alright. Just mounting hardware, ribbon cable, and the PCB itself that we have to install. One thing we do have to do is get to the top of the N64 motherboard, so all of this stuff has to come off. I'm probably not really going to show this because just screws. And honestly, if you can't do this, then you probably shouldn't be worried about trying to solder up this thing. Well, the first thing I want to do is attach 4 wires to the multi-out for RGB and ground. And using some of the provided ribbon. Tin up these leads. And I'm going to cut them way short. For the ones that are going to actually solder to the multi. Separate them. Add some extra solder to the pins. Okay, you can get a close-up of that. There's plenty of online pinouts for the multi-out. Which pin does what wire does what. Losing heat sinks, that's not good. Looks like that wire will come off the side. No problem. And we are looking for the DAC chips. Looks like he says there could be 4 different chips. And looks like I have the MAV.-NUS. So it looks like the pins that I want to solder to start from 1 and go all the way down the side. According to the board, looks like I start with D0, which is pin 2, and all the pinouts are different for all the 3 or 4 chips here. So start with pin 2 D0. Let's see, D6. Looks like they're not in order after D6, because on the MAV I've got 3.3 and then desync. But on here I've got desync, clock, 3.3, ground. So we'll have to mix up those last 4 or 5 wires. Probably do that up here instead of on the chip. That way I can try to solder straight to the chip with the ribbon cable. I'm going to separate some ribbon cable and strip it and tin it off camera. I think one of the first things I want to do is add some solder to the legs of that chip, if I can get away with it. Just like that. It should help with trying to solder that on there. Oh my. I don't think that's even close to the right pitch of wiring there. I'm trying to look at his picture a little closer here on the internet. Looks like he got them all smushed on there. Oh, it's a different chip. Yeah, I think I've got the worst one. I think the DENC is more a chip like this one, because that is 16 and it's only 11 conductors on this, and it is much too thick. I might have to rethink that one a little bit. Well, ribbon cable was definitely a disaster here, so I've actually resorted back to magnet wire, trying to do one leg and one wire at a time, so it's super tedious, but it's really the only way that I can see to make this happen effectively, because the ribbon cable, it's too hard to control, too many solder bridges, it's just too tight for it. My God, that was difficult. I'll get a very close up of that, because whew, what a mess. There you go. It looks like I might still have a couple bridges in there to look at, but I'll get my 10x loop out there and fix those up. Man, that took some effort. Well, it looks like I did not have any shorts over here, but just to be sure, I'm going to go through with the meter and check like that, and then I'll also check, let's see, these pads up here are the same, so I'll check from here probably over to this main chip over here. What the hell? I must be shorted to ground on D0 here. Yeah. Okay, so I do have a short. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do and try to get these all sorted here. Well, the only thing really left to do before I test it is to solder up the RGB output on the board itself. So I'll get that done off camera and then we'll hook up to the TV. Now, the wires are soldered on, but I just wanted to show there are a few pads on here that you're just not going to use. Okay, obviously these are the same as these, and I just happen to use the small ones. These over here you're not going to use. Those are actually used to program the chip. And there's a couple composite sync pads. There's already, let's see, I think he said you should use the composite sync 75 if you want to hook up composite sync, and we may do that later. But then there's these three jumpers right here. These are only if you're hooking up to a PAL console, I think. I think maybe even if you're using a certain SCART cord, like the PAL GameCube SCART cord or something like that. I think he mentions this on his website. Alright, so here we go. I don't know what that is. Anyway, I'm trying to get it to the point where I can show the difference between RGB and composite. Yeah, it's definitely darker, which is not the worst thing, I guess. There's no adjustment on it, so that's how it's going to have to be, though. But at least I know it's working and I can get it back together. Well, it would certainly not, I would prefer to not do it this way, but I've actually put a bunch of super glue on the top of that chip, trying to engulf those wires so that they don't move, because there's not enough solder on those to keep them in place. If any kind of movement happened, it would just come undone. So I think from here it's pretty obvious what needs to happen as far as the wires need to be routed out the back. Probably bend up this little part of the tab and route those out the back and get this all together, and I'll do that off camera. The only advice I can give you about putting this thing back together is on the 3 aluminum heatsink blocks, don't tighten down any of those screws until you've got all of them started, because there's just a sill pad between the aluminum block and the chip. It's not adhesive, and when you tighten down one screw and the other 3 are not in there, it can break that aluminum block off from the chip, and then your other 3 holes are no longer aligned. Just a quick little tip. Alright, I will say this nut and bolt situation for holding the PCB, I don't like it. Too much of an afterthought. I just got some double-sided sticky tape on the bottom of it, as well as that nut and bolt. If I'm being honest, I don't know that I see a much better way, unless it's just mounted to one of these nuts right here, so that this board actually sits under the heat sink and not on the heat sink. I don't think it gets hot enough to make a difference. Definitely used a little too long of wires, but I'm certainly not going to take the time to shorten them. I'm sure the custom will be alright with that. That looks pretty decent. So that's pretty well buttoned up, other than the top half and screws, and I can put it all together and start retesting. Well, I just tested it, and guess what I need to do? I need to add that composite sink back in there, and I also, unfortunately, put that screw in under here and then covered it with this thing. So double screwed, but I need to get that wire back on there so I can actually test it with his cord. It worked fine with mine, but apparently his SCART cord was wired up with composite sync and not composite video. Okay, I was able to hook up with his SCART cord. And no, I'm not sure where he got that. It kind of looks like one of the new shielded ones the Retro Console Accessories was promoting. I'll set you up over here. Well, there you have it, Tim Worthington's Universal RGB board for the Nintendo 64. Currently, the only way you can get RGB from it's a certain set of serial numbers of N64 on, which means all the translucent ones, this is the only way to do it. Until, of course, we get the N64 HDMI kit. And I don't remember that guy's name offhand, but I'll put a link in the description. And again, no set date on the release of that one either, but this one is available now.